Right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in music, entertainment, sports, entrepreneurship, and so much more. Nick Durst here along with Joe Calabrese and Joe. Our guest today, definitely more talented than a lot of our guests when it comes to being in music, instrumentals, and all that. So why don't you tell everybody who we have with us, and then, of course, throughout, he will explain his origin stories about how he got to where he is today.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do mostly sports media. We've done a lot of reality stars over the course of the last 6 to 8 months. But every time we get a musician on with us, it's always different. But yeah, you're right. He's incredibly talented. Uh, he was in a band. Now he's doing solo stuff. But he's a singer-songwriter. He's the bassist. You may know him, better know him from his time in the band Dispatch. He's got an album releasing later this year. Currently finishing a little bit of a Northeastern tour over here. So we'll be wrapping up that in the next couple of days. We're very happy to have him on. Pete Francis. Pete, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, guys. It's great to be with you. I'm doing well. How are you?
We're all right. Weather's not so great outside, but yeah. So we want to get started quickly here. You grew up one of four children, and you grew up in Connecticut. So tell us what your childhood was like.
Yeah, I'm the youngest of four. My mom is Swedish, and it's kind of fun to mention this because she played guitar a lot, and she would sing Swedish folk songs. And then all of my siblings are pretty creative. So, and I'm the youngest by a lot. My next sibling is 7 years. My next brother's 10 years, sister's 12 years. So when I was a little guy, I was hearing their records. And so out of one room could be Pink Floyd, another room, James Brown, another room, Joni Mitchell. So, and I soaked it up, from very early on. I have to say I was into music. I was looking at the album covers, reading all about it, learning, and just sort of, soaking all of that up.
So with your Swedish background and living in the Northeast, any interest in any winter sports at all, hockey or anything?
Yeah, no, I wanted, because you guys are sports guys, I wanted to mention that I was very serious soccer player. I played on varsity. I was the captain. I also played varsity tennis. And then growing up, I played baseball and played all the sports, and just a huge passion for sports, going to Yankees games with my dad. Don Mattingly was one of my heroes. Another one of my heroes with Pele, the soccer great who just passed. And I got some very cool old black and white tapes of Pele juggling a grapefruit. And I was so really inspired by him as a player. That's where my juggling began. And so that was something early on that I really loved to do.
Nice. So he inspired you in that aspect. What other musical acts or musicians or bands kind of inspired you growing up? And what age did you really start taking music seriously and try to perhaps pursue a career out of it?
The songwriters that had the most influence were Cat Stevens, Van Morrison, Bob Marley, Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles. These I could really relate to their songs, the song structure, the words. And I love singing in the chorus at school. I didn't pick up the guitar till I was 15. I messed around on piano, but when I did pick it up and got into it at 16, I really got into it, meaning I played all the time. Similar to how I felt about soccer, I was completely obsessed with it, with both those things.
So eventually you went to Middlebury College,
Yep.
and that is where ultimately you would meet your future bandmates. So
Mhm.
describe your experience at college. What did you study there? And individually meeting your future friends and bandmates, and how did the forming of Dispatch eventually happen?
Yeah, I think it's so cool that you guys have a sports show, and I think that there are some real similarities about being in a band and being on a sports team. In high school, one of my favorite things was to get in the van and go to the game, and all of the banter and fun that would happen in the van. And then you're going to the game and you want to win, right? So with the band, what we found is we got in a Suburban, a Volvo, or an old Ford 250, and it was like being on a team and going and wanting to win the audience. In terms of meeting the guys, I was 19. I really was on a mission to start a band. My brother was in a band. I saw my brother open up for the Wailers at the Capitol Theater. This was before the Capitol Theater was totally fixed up, so it had this grungy kind of vibe that was pretty cool. And it's a vivid moment of remembering my brother on stage and thinking, that's cool. I want to do that. And so at Middlebury, I was looking for musicians. I met Brad through another friend. He was 2 years ahead of me. I said, I have a couple songs. I only had a couple songs and I knew only a few covers. And I decided to sing that song to Brad. I think he immediately liked it, and he sang with me. And Brad has an amazing ability to harmonize. A lot of people can sing melodies, but to understand harmony or have an innate sense of vocal harmony is rare, and he has that. So when the voices came together, it was like two pieces of Velcro, and it was a lock. So that was rolling. Then a month later, I met Chad. I was also playing a gig. Chad came down, hey man. At first, Chad said, I play trombone. So I thought I was bringing a trombone player to rehearsal. And then little did I know, he sang me some of his songs he had written, and I thought they were excellent. And here's the funny part. Brad and Chad weren't that keen on working together at the beginning. They were different type of people. Chad was a little more scrappy, sort of a wild guy, and Brad was a bit more conservative. But I think I saw the potential. And after many months of cajoling, I got them around and we sang together. And the first time we sang together, I knew we had something.
So when did you realize in the early days that Dispatch had that opportunity to grow into something bigger? And it's good that you equate being in a band to being on a sports team. So what were some of your favorite moments through the band's days?
I think when you talk to people, you say, oh, those highlights and what you sold out and what they did. But there were so many moves that were smaller moves along the way. And each gig was an opportunity to win over people. And I think we innately understood that. So when we played, if it was a dorm lounge, if it was a birthday party, we took every gig seriously and we wanted to bring our best. And I think we were also willing to really be open and friendly with our fans. And I think that really paid off in the end.
So the decision to take a hiatus at first, was that an individual thing or was it a collective with all of you?
Well, the funny thing with Dispatch is that we've taken breaks. There was something called The Last Dispatch that drew 110,000 people to Boston on July 31st, 2004. Now, that was supposed to be the last show. We did get back together in 07 and sold out MSG 3 nights in a row. So, as you know, bands, can be volatile in some ways. If you look at the Red Hot Chili Peppers, John Frusciante has dropped out a few times, but they've gone on and come back. But yes, there have been various hiatuses with the band.
What was the support like when the band announced its 2011 return?
Immense. The support was really spectacular. It was such an amazing moment for me because I got to play some of the venues around the US that I find to be remarkable music venues. Red Rocks, the Greek Theater in San Francisco, the New York Rooms, Radio City Music Hall. So these have been they've been amazing moments.
You stole my next question because I was going to ask you what some of your favorite venues were you got to play with.
All right, well,
as the band or individually. But so we'll go back because you mentioned the Madison Square Garden shows. I wanted to ask specifically about those. There were charity concerts and shows that you played at MSG. You sold it out 3 straight nights, right? So talk about how that materialized, right? Because Nick and I, we're from New York as well. We're from Staten Island, so not far away. You play the Garden, that's the Mecca, right? No matter what you do, that's it. So how did that materialize, playing those concerts?
It was an extraordinary experience. As I mentioned, 110,000 people came to Boston. We wait 3 years, significant amount of time. You remember the whole MySpace thing. There was a link between MySpace, and the shows went on sale, and miraculously they sold out within a half hour. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been going to Knicks games, Ranger games my whole life. The Garden is the Mecca. It's the world's most famous arena. So it was an unbelievable experience. And not sure if you guys did know, but that Ford 250 van that we toured all around the country got rolled into the Garden.
Wow.
And we in the center of the arena, and we played our acoustic set on top of the van.
It's crazy.
So, what's so important is just to emphasize the independence that we felt and fought for throughout, our time being together.
That's crazy. They got the car in there,
All right.
rolled in the middle. Hope to take the license plates off, but
They're hilarious. They're like, yeah, it's no problem. We got to put smaller tires on it, siphon out the gasoline, we'll roll it in. So the garden has seen everything. So
right, for sure. Which venues have the best green room food?
It's funny, man. We became friends with some of the guys that were doing the labor workers at the Garden. And we just were friendly. And when they brought a homemade tray of mozzarella and some meats, like that topped it off. And I think that part of the way the three of us have been is to be real with people, and not to kind of get phony with a lot of it. And so when you get a moment like that, where people working at the Garden bring you food and you get to share that, that's a real highlight for me.
How do you build up your stamina when you're knowing you're going to do shows, being out there on stage for a long time? And what's your pre-show routine? Are you like, let me use the bathroom right before I go on stage, or I don't want to drink too much water, I'm have to go there on the show, or am I like, let me drink some tea because I want to have my voice soothing? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of points there. Tea, sure, warm up the vocal, warm up the guitar. And often you want to be in lockstep with your bandmates, because it's entertainment, but it's also it takes a lot of work and stamina to get through a gig, where sometimes it's not just, oh, it's great, they're up there singing songs and running around. Like, we're thinking about the set list, we're thinking about the time, we're very focused on the sound. What we're hearing is very different than what you're hearing. Often we wear in-ear monitors and it doesn't sound as glorious as it does for you in the house. So we're hearing levels, vocals. Sometimes a stadium is so loud that you're really relying on what you can hear. Sometimes there's a microphone to the side where Brad might talk into the mic so we can hear what's going on. But, you know, because I'm an athlete and playing, it's similar to a game, because you have to, there's time, you have to put in serious effort. And similarly, where the game where you want to win the audience. And that is our job every night.
What are some of your favorite cities to perform in?
You know, I would, San Francisco, that theater, or the Greek, was just sublime. As I mentioned, Red Rocks is unlike any venue in the world. New York City probably tops them all. You know, I'm into the Yankees, so I'm not going to support the Red Sox, but the 3 nights at the TD Garden wasn't bad. When that year is when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup, and they gave us each Bruins jerseys with our name on the back, and we wore hockey equipment and jumped off the stage. So there are lots of, you know, fun stories like that. But man, playing all over the US is, I have been lucky enough, we have been lucky enough to play in Europe and Australia. But in the US, yeah, I would say New York.
So tell us some of the favorite acts that you've gotten to play with, whether as a solo artist or with Dispatch, and who are some of your favorite people that you've met in the music industry?
Well, I'll start with kind of a wild one that you may not expect, but we opened for Outkast at Washington University.
Ooh.
And
Wow.
And I was blown away, because I'm a huge Outkast fan, and Andre 3000, I think he's one of the best rappers out there, and they're both super cool. So it wasn't a lot of big to do and lots of people. I was standing backstage watching the two of them perform. And I feel like, if I remember correctly, Andre 3000 had ski boots on, a furry skirt, and no shirt. And he was just ruling, you know. So that's a wild one. That's sort of a wild and crazy one. But, you know, bands that we opened for, and we always liked, G Love, Blues Traveler. We were huge, and still am, fans of Dave Matthews. He brought us on I think it was the Caravan tour. Yeah, his band's amazing. Yeah, those are the ones that come to mind.
It's impressive. So we know that you've been through a lot in your life. So I would like to ask you, for people who are going through similar battles, difficult times, what personal advice would you give people who were in your position previously?
Well, the first thing that means a lot to me, if I've been struggling or I think of another person struggling, is to say, I hear you and I have compassion for what you're going through. A lot of people just want to be heard. And so for so long, we've heard this term mental illness, but I like using mental forgiveness. And to me, it's very important, because nobody wants to be stricken with an illness that affects their mind, that affects how they feel. You know, these can be really crippling things, and I've dealt with it in a serious way in my life, you know. I've been hospitalized. I've dealt with depression, bipolar disorder. But, part of what I want to talk about when I mention this is that it's not just down into a dungeon and that's it. This experience can be a transformative experience. And I think we as a community need to be more open and hearing people who are struggling so they feel heard, they can explain, we can feel compassion for them. And then ultimately, through this darkness, there may be a light that people can find. And I found that. I found through a lot of this hardship that light, and that's really what my new record is about, Pattern Sky.
Yeah, I my father is bipolar depressed. It's been for a very long time. So while I don't know about that personally, having to have dealt with that for a very good portion of my life, to see the high lows, the up and downs, the peaks and the valleys, I've seen the best of it and I've seen the worst of it. So for what you've gone through, I do have compassion for you, and I think the ability to take what you've gone through in your life and to channel it into good music. I was listening to a couple of your songs here the last couple of days before this interview. Nick and I, we definitely wish you the best of luck here going forward with your record. When is it going to be released?
So first, let me just say I feel compassion for you and with your dad, and that's really hard, But thank you that my record, that you feel it's coming out in May. And I'm sort of addressing a lot of that in the record. I don't know how you guys feel, but sometimes I feel that we as individuals, our society can be very much stuck in the head in our thoughts. And this record to me is trying to bring this energy from the head into my heart so I can process it differently than just sort of a mental exercise. And that has been helpful in my journey.
Yeah, well said. Definitely a great way to cope doing it that way. What would you say in your life or your career is your I'm right moment? So what I mean by that is a time or place where you wanted to pursue something, you asked somebody for advice, they said, you know what, Pete, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. And you said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately, you will see why it is that I'm right.
Well, when it comes to music, you have to be tough. And if you believe in your art and you believe in your individuality, you have to be tough. So I can't tell you the number of times that lawyers, people in the business, agents told us to do this, told us to do that. We came back to each other. What's going to be best for the band? What will be best for ourselves? And we continued on that path of independence. But that's a hard one when you're having professionals and adults, people that were older than us, telling us, well, you're playing wetlands now, but if you want to get to Roseland and these, you should follow this. And then we prove them wrong.
Yeah, we've had musicians on with us in the past. We've had producers on with us, and similar words regarding the battles in terms of the legalities and the people that you have to go through, telling you one thing in one ear, how you feel, right? But most people carve out their own path, and for you, you were able to do it successfully in a band. You're doing it successfully as a solo artist. So Nick and I, we applaud you. We wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you.
My last question here is, Nick always likes putting this on the rundown, so I always ask it. I tend to be more of a spiritual type of person. I'm a very deep person, and believe it or not, I am into astrology. So I always have to ask our guests what their zodiac sign is.
Yeah, I'm a Leo.
Okay.
And August 1st. And I share the birthday with Jerry Garcia.
There you go. Well, Leos tend to be not necessarily performance oriented, but the types of personality they are, they don't dislike being the center of attention. I can tell you that. So
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hear that. But to me, it's not as much the center of attention. It's that I want the group that I'm working with, for instance, right now, Noble Steed, who's putting out the record, my manager, Jason Spiewak, and Eric Davis. It's about a great team. And Dispatch was about a great team. And sometimes we hear these names, these stars' names, right? But we don't necessarily know about the team. And that's one thing that's always been fascinating to me, is how does one assemble a team for success?
absolutely. Pete, we wish you the best of luck moving forward with everything. What we do here is we always give our guests the last words. So you've shared and promoted plenty already, but if there's anything else that you would like to share, or if there's anything else you would like to promote, by all means, go ahead and do so. This was a great interview. Nick and I always love diversifying what we have here. Always have an interesting perspective talking to musicians. So yeah, great stories. And like I said, we wish you the best of luck moving forward. So if there's anything else you would like to share, by all means, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say thank you to you both for having me on, for talking about mental forgiveness, for feeling that there's a lot of pain and hurt in the world, and to help people realize to bring their own light, to not fight the darkness, but to bring their own light. And that really is it.
All right. Thank you so much, Pete. We appreciate your time here. Everyone go check out Pete's work. It's going to be everywhere real soon. So look out for that. That's going to do it for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Pete Francis, for my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.